Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. Growing up, I thought my family was relatively normal, though I wouldn't say it was perfect. My dad was the steady, reliable one, a hard-working accountant who put his family above everything else. He was the kind of man who didn't just talk about his values, but lived them. He was my role model, the person I looked up to most. My mom, on the other hand, was a bit more self-absorbed. Don't get me wrong, she wasn't neglectful. She made sure I was fed, clothed, and that my basic needs were met. But she wasn't emotionally present in the same way my dad was. Her priorities leaned more toward maintaining her social life and keeping up appearances. She always seemed more invested in impressing her friends and neighbors than in spending meaningful time with me. Growing up, I didn't think much of it. It was just the way things were. Then there was my mom's brother, Uncle Mike. He was the black sheep of the family, but him and my mother were very close. While my dad was the epitome of stability, Mike was the exact opposite. Unpredictable, manipulative, and always involved in some sort of drama and problems. He'd been in and out of trouble for most of his life, including a stint in jail for fraud. Despite his shady past, my mom always stood by him. "He's family," she'd say. "We have to stick together." Dad tolerated Mike, but I could tell he didn't trust him. Over the years, I began to see why. When I was 18, my dad passed away suddenly from a heart attack. It was the single most devastating moment of my life. He had always been my rock, the person I turned to for advice, support, and reassurance. Without him, I felt like my entire world had been flipped upside down. One of the few things that gave me a sense of security during that difficult time was knowing that Dad had planned for my future. He had been saving diligently for years to ensure I could go to college without the burden of debt. He talked often about how important education was to him and how he wanted me to have opportunities he never did. The college fund was his legacy, and it meant everything to me. But just a few months before his passing, that security was ripped away from me. I sat down with my mom to discuss college, how to access the fund, which school to choose, and so on. That's when she dropped a bombshell. She wasn't going to let me use the money. Instead, she had decided to give it to my cousin, Lisa, 17 female, daughter of Uncle Mike, so she could attend a prestigious private university. Her reasoning? Lisa had better grades and more potential, and Uncle Mike had convinced her that investing in Lisa's education would benefit the family more. "Lisa's got a real chance to make something of herself," Mom said. "You'll figure something out. You're smart and a man. That's what men do for their family. They prioritize women's well-being." I was stunned. That money was meant for me. My dad had worked tirelessly to save it for my future. I argued with her, but she dismissed me, saying I was being selfish and didn't understand the bigger picture. She said I could always get scholarships or take out loans if I wanted to go to college so badly. Furious and desperate, I told her that if she gave away my college fund, I would sue her. I didn't know much about the legalities, but I was willing to try anything to stop her. My threat must have shaken her, because she told me she needed time to think about it. A few days later, she told Uncle Mike she wouldn't be giving him the money. I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. What followed next would change my life forever. A week later, Uncle Mike showed up at my door unannounced. He wasn't just angry, he was livid. He ranted about how selfish I was for denying Lisa her opportunity, and accused me of being an ungrateful loser and not a real man. I was ready to kick him out when he dropped a bombshell that stopped me in my tracks. "You think you're entitled to that money?" he sneered. "That's rich, coming from someone who isn't even his father's son." I froze. My heart started pounding as he continued. He claimed that my mom had an affair early in her marriage, and that I was the result of that affair. According to him, my dad had found out but chose to forgive her and raise me as his own because he loved me. Uncle Mike, however, had known about the affair all along and had been using it to manipulate my mom for years. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. At first, I thought he was lying just to hurt me, but something about the way he said it, so smug, so confident, made me think otherwise. I demanded he leave, but the damage was done. My mind was racing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my entire life had been built on a lie. That night, I confronted my mom. At first, she denied everything, but when I told her what Uncle Mike had said, she broke down and admitted it. She confessed that she had an affair with her coworker early in her marriage and that I was the result. She claimed my dad had been a good man who chose to forgive her and raise me as his own because he loved me and didn't want to destroy our family. But she also admitted that Uncle Mike had been blackmailing her for years, threatening to expose the truth if she didn't comply with his demands. When I asked why she was so willing to give away my college fund, she said she felt like she had no choice. "He would have told you everything," she sobbed. "I was trying to protect you." Her excuse didn't invoke any sympathy. All I could feel was anger. She had betrayed my dad's memory, lied to me my entire life, and nearly destroyed my future just to appease her manipulative brother. After that confrontation, I knew I couldn't stay in that toxic environment any longer. I demanded access to the college fund, threatening legal action again if necessary. This time, Mom didn't fight me. She handed over the account details, and I withdrew the money. With the funds secured, I packed my bags and left. I moved to another state, where I enrolled in a university and began rebuilding my life. It wasn't easy. Starting over rarely is, but it was the best decision I ever made. Away from my mom and Uncle Mike's influence, I was finally able to focus on myself and my future. Now, at 26, I have a stable career in tech, a nice apartment, and a comfortable savings account. I haven't heard from my mother since. I just know that my uncle revealed her secrets to all family, and now they don't talk to each other anymore. A few months ago, my mom reached out to me, asking for financial support. She claimed she was struggling to pay her bills and had no one else to turn to. Her voice cracked as she tried to guilt-trip me, saying it was my duty as a son to take care of her. I laughed bitterly and told her she had lost the right to ask for my help when she betrayed my dad's wishes and my future. I reminded her that she had the chance to support me when I needed her most, but she chose to prioritize her brother and his daughter instead. She cried and begged, saying she had made mistakes, but still deserved compassion. I told her to ask Uncle Mike, or my biological father, for help if she was so desperate. Then I hung up and blocked her number. Am I the a-hole? OP's mom didn't just betray OP's dad. She betrayed OP too. Her actions were selfish from the start, lying to OP his entire life, almost giving away the college fund OP's dad worked so hard to save, and continuing to prioritize the manipulative uncle over her own child. OP did the right thing by taking control of his life and cutting toxic people out. OP's dad would be proud of the person OP has become. And now let's hear the community's opinion. I'm sorry, but your mom trying to justify giving away your college fund by claiming she was protecting you is such a load of crap. She wasn't protecting you. She was protecting herself from her own bad decisions. And Uncle Mike, what a piece of work. I'm glad you took the money and left. It sounds like the only way you could have escaped that toxic environment. Also, kudos to your dad for being a stand-up guy despite everything. He's the real hero here. Not the a-hole. Your mom had so many opportunities to come clean, to stand up for you, and to honor your dad's wishes. But she chose to lie and enable your uncle instead. It's incredible that you've managed to turn things around and build a successful life, despite everything they put you through. As for your mom asking for help now, nope. Actions have consequences. She made her bed, now she has to lie in it. Don't let anyone guilt you into thinking otherwise. Wow, what a story. First of all, not the a-hole at all. Second, I just want to say how much I admire your resilience. You didn't let any of this mess derail you. You stood up for yourself, took control of your future, and built a life your dad would be proud of. Your mom and uncle don't deserve a second chance, and honestly, it's better for your mental health to keep them at arm's length. I dated my ex Jane for about 7 years. During that time, I got pretty close to her divorced parents, especially her father, Dan. My dad died when I was young, and Dan played somewhat of a parental role model for me, which I really appreciated. I broke up with Jane about 4 months ago because it was clear our futures no longer aligned. A few weeks ago, Dan passed away, which I was and still am very upset about. It turns out that he updated his will about 1 year ago and actually left me about $150K. We were dating at the time. I had no clue he did this. In the will, I wasn't referred to as his daughter's partner. It just named me. He also left money to Jane, her siblings, his own siblings, and some to charity. After his death, this all came out, and I was very surprised that he left me anything, but I was grateful. It's not a ton of money, but it will be enough for a nice down payment on a house and some savings. Since it came out, though, Jane and her siblings are absolutely pissed and are demanding I give the money back to them and deny what was left to me. My friend is an attorney who works with inheritances and says I'm absolutely in the clear. He said if it mentioned me as Jane's partner, they might have somewhat of a case, but because it didn't, I'm totally fine. I have some mixed feelings on keeping it, but it will be a huge help to me, so I'm leaning towards keeping it. Am I the a-hole if I do? Not the a-hole. It really does sound like Dan wanted you to have the money, independent of your relationship with Jane, because he'd come to like you and wanted to support you in your own right. Not the a-hole. The fact that he didn't mention you as a partner in the will says to me that he obviously thought very highly of you and was prepared to give you the money whether you were with his daughter or not. Enjoy the money and the memories you have of him. Her family may not like it, but as mentioned by a lawyer, you're in the clear. Not the a-hole, and personally I think he meant for you to have it either way. If he meant it to be a shared asset with you and girlfriend, he would have named both of you, or left it just to her. He had 4 months to change his will if he really didn't want you to have it. $150K is a ton of money, so I'm just going to say that if it's not a ton of money to you, maybe consider helping out someone that it would mean something to, as a lasting legacy to a person who was like a father figure to you. Maybe big brothers and sisters. My 40 female, boyfriend, 36 male, have been together for 2 years. We have a great relationship. We agree on most things. He is very loving and considerate, and overall the love of my life. We recently bought our first home together, which I was hoping would be a fresh start. For context, he and his wife were married for 12 years, shortly before we started dating. Sadly, she passed. In my opinion, I've been very considerate of his grief and supportive of how he chooses to grieve her. For the first 14 months of our relationship, he had an 8x10 picture of the two of them on the mantle in the living room, which I was understanding of, especially since I moved into his apartment that they had shared together. After 14 months, it was Christmas time, and I removed it to decorate, with his permission. Fast forward to now. We've been in our new home that we bought together for about a month now, and are beginning to decorate. She was a service member, and he wants her folded flag to stay in the living room on display, which I support. However, we have another sitting room with many bookshelves, and he wants to have their photo together on display in that room. I understand the pain of losing a spouse. I am also widowed. I know how devastating and empty it can feel. But I simply would like for this home to be a fresh start for the both of us. It's free of trauma and heartbreak, and I want it to be our place together. I do not wish for him to get rid of the photo, just not display it in our main living areas. This is really an issue for him and is causing him lots of stress, and he is becoming increasingly emotional and depressed. We cannot come to an agreement or move past it. It's all causing lots of tension in our relationship that neither of us want. We aren't aggressive and basically never fight, so this issue is hard for us to navigate. I've also noticed he still keeps 2 photos of her in his nightstand drawer and a few other keepsakes. I've stayed silent about it all, except for the picture he wants to display. I understand he wants to cherish her memory, and I know had she not passed, they'd still be happily together. But given the circumstances, I want to move forward. Am I the a-hole? No a-hole. Your husband is still grieving. He was married to his first wife for 12 years, and he wants to cherish her by displaying her memory in the living room. At the same time, you're widowed too, but the difference is that you want to forget your past so you can have a fresh start at your new home. You need to sit down and talk with your husband about this and come up with a compromise. Maybe you won't have it in the living room, but it would be good to put in the bedroom. OP, your husband does not want to forget her yet, and you need to understand that. He loves you, but needs to cherish his first wife's memory. No a-hole. You and he began dating soon after his wife's death, it seems, and you moved into their apartment less than a year after her death. Is that right? He has not properly grieved the loss of his wife. He did not give himself enough time to fully comprehend his grief. He may be feeling guilt for being with you, like he thinks he has dishonored her memory by being with you. The agreement about displaying the photograph and flag and his insistence they be prominent in the shared space of your new home is an indication he may benefit from grief counseling or couples counseling for both of you. You are not wrong for wanting him to have a more private display for his wife's flag and photos. This is your home and your living space, not a shrine to his dead wife. You are not expecting him to hide or discard the items. You just want him to keep them in a more private space. This is a reasonable request. Suggesting he speak with a grief counselor might be a good plan. No a-hole. He's not ready to be in a relationship with you. You said you got together shortly after she died. I think you are a rebound. You're a placeholder. You are company so he won't be alone. He's showing you that her ghost takes priority in his home with you. Please listen to what he's showing you. He's never going to be the man you want him to be because he's still hers. My wife, Kim, 36 female, and I, 33 male, just got married, but have been together for 7 years. We've been engaged the past 3 years. I met a lot of her family during our relationship. With the exception of her parents and one aunt, the rest have been polite but aloof when I've seen them. Her parents and aunt have always been very nice, warm, and welcoming, and treated me like family once it became clear we were serious about each other. The first couple years it didn't bother me. What did start to bother me was when we were living together and engaged. The holiday cards would be sent and they'd be addressed only to Kim, whereas her brothers and sisters' cards were addressed to her siblings and their spouses. Her parents had invited me to some outings with the family, only to have the invitation rescinded because aunts, uncles, cousins didn't want non-family members there. Kim would get invited to birthday parties or cookouts, and I wouldn't be. And that's fair enough since it was their parties, and they get to pick their guests. The only times I've had to interact with them was at things hosted by Kim, her parents, or the good aunt. The straw that broke the camel's back for me was last year. My mother-in-law sadly passed away. Come the funeral, I was not allowed to sit with Kim. When the surviving family members were read aloud, I was not listed, yet her sister's new husband she'd been with less than 2 years was, and other new additions that had been around less time than I have, and they were seated in the family section. I didn't say anything about it, but afterwards, Kim asked if she had heard right or if I had been left off the list. We visited her dad that night and he apologized to us. He let his 2 sisters handle all the arrangements for the funeral, and they had made the list, and the reasoning was that I wasn't family since Kim and I weren't married. We didn't raise a stink about it and just let it be. Now, we've recently had our wedding, and it was great. I'm stoked to finally be married to the woman I love. When we were making our guest list, Kim asked about her family members that had always been aloof to me. I told her if she wanted to invite them, I'd support her in that, but I wouldn't interact with them. She wanted to keep peace, so she invited them. At the reception, it was like a switch had been flipped in them. They were bubbly, friendly, and kept trying to hug me and welcome me to the family. But I ignored them in favor of talking to friends and family. At one point, the aunts cornered Kim and I when we were going around thanking people for coming, and asked Kim why she married a prick. I told them I just don't want anything to do with people who basically ignored me until we were married, and Kim agreed with me. They gossiped about it some more the rest of the evening, and some days after on Facebook posts. Initially, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, but I do feel bad that it affected Kim, too. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. They are allowed to be old-fashioned, and you are allowed to not deal with them. Not the a-hole. People don't get to treat you like a non-person for 7 years, and then pretend that never happened. If you were in a new relationship of less than a year, sure, maybe some exclusion would make sense. But that's not your situation. They had 7 years to welcome you. Their loss. Nope, not the a-hole. They're allowed to treat you using whatever arcane rules they wanted to for invites to their events, but that didn't mean there wouldn't be consequences for their actions. I'm not sure why you invited them to the wedding at all. Why invite them to keep the peace if you weren't going to actually do so at the wedding? Personally, I wouldn't have invited them to begin with. Once you were engaged, their behavior became unreasonable and incredibly rude. And to not let you sit with Kim at the funeral? That's just despicable. And they didn't invite you to birthday parties and cookouts because you weren't married? What the duck? Did Kim go to them without you? We have some background here. My sister-in-law is my brother's second wife, and she is the stepmother to his 3 kids, ages 17, 15, and 14. My brother, Sam, lost his first wife when the kids were very small and remarried quickly, in part because he did not want to be alone and also because he did not want his kids to grow up without a mom. They've been married for 10 years now, and the 3 kids in question do not call sister-in-law mom. They do not want anyone else to call her their mom either. She is the mother of my 2 nephews with my brother, but the discussion in question is regarding the older 3. My brother and sister-in-law went to therapy with the kids, out of concern that children so young were so resistant to calling a new mother figure mom, someone who loved them and was genuinely there wanting the best for them. They ended up blaming their maternal family for the lack of title for sister-in-law, and attempted to cut them out of the children's lives when the maternal family refused to tell the kids they wanted them to call sister-in-law mom because she was the mom now. The courts were brought in, and that put a stop to removing contact. Over the years, the kids have been corrected many times. There have also been many punishments given out because the kids rebel against sister-in-law and have said things to hurt her. It's basically one big fight at their house. The rest of my family are kind of mixed on all this, and some feel like Sam and sister-in-law are wrong to push, but others believe something is amiss because the kids have not mellowed out towards sister-in-law at all and still refuse to have anyone speak about her as their mom. I think they also believe their maternal side of the family are to blame and that they believe they are wrong for not encouraging it. I have spoken to my nephew and nieces. I know their mom's family have never said anything. What they do is talk about their mom and share her memory with them, and it led to a connection forming through the maternal family. I think it's unfair to keep pushing them to call sister-in-law mom, and I think a focus should have been put on giving them a happy home life versus pushing for something the kids have expressed they do not want. A few days ago, Sam and sister-in-law were talking to our family about the kids going back to school and how my 14-year-old niece corrected the school admin who referred to sister-in-law as her mom. Sister-in-law talked about how upset she was and how she doesn't understand how the kids can still be so wrong on this. Sam said he wanted to pull out his hair. I suggested, and not for the first time, that they should come to terms with the reality of things. Sam said the reality is sister-in-law is their mom and has been for 10 years. I told them the reality is sister-in-law is not their mom, she's their stepmother, and you can't force feelings on that to change. I am now considered the a-hole. They said I only hurt sister-in-law more and rubbed her face in the rejection by saying it. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. If the kids were 7, 5, and 4 when they lost their mother, then they were old enough to have coherent memories and a proper relationship with her. Therefore, it's ludicrous for your brother and sister-in-law to think that they can just wipe her away and install sister-in-law as mommy. Wanting to be considered a mother figure is understandable, but the notion that she is their mom is insulting to the memory of your brother's late wife, and if I were those kids, I'd be really put off too. Sister-in-law needs to back the heck off, or those kids are going to hate her guts forever. Not the a-hole. They're calling you an a-hole because you're saying a truth sister-in-law doesn't want to hear. That 10 years later, the ship is well and truly sailed, and they'll never call her mother. They're pointing fingers at the maternal family, but honestly, I think brother and sister-in-law dug the majority of the grave themselves from violently trying to pry the kids from their presumably loved grandparents, and for all the punishments they'd given out over the years. I wouldn't want anything to do with either of them after all those stunts, and would probably get way too much satisfaction from denying sister-in-law all the time. If bro and sister-in-law are throwing such a hissy fit now, I'm dreading the meltdown that will happen when the kiddos hit 18 and run for the hills. Not the a-hole. Yikes, though. I think the sister-in-law and your brother need more therapy to get down to the root of why they are so fixated on the 3 kids calling her mom, and not by her name. They need to be doing whatever makes the kids comfortable and honor their real mother. No ifs, ands, or buts. I'm a 25-year-old Indian woman. I have 2 older brothers, 38 and 24. I was married off at 18 to my ex-husband. He was 26 then. My parents had to give less dowry as my in-laws wanted to marry off ex in a hurry. After marriage, all I had to do was cook a meal, stay with my mother-in-law during the day, and have S with my husband at night. Then I found out my husband was cheating on me with his long-term girlfriend. I told mother-in-law. I was asked to ignore it or make sure he loved me so he would not stray. His girlfriend got married. Husband started sleeping with everyone that he could and drinking. I was blamed for his behavior. After 2 years, we realized I was not getting pregnant and could not get pregnant. Not gonna lie, I was relieved. My in-laws were not. Nobody would talk to me. I spent my days in silence. My mother was happy I was married off. She did not care for my problems. My father could not care less as his responsibility was done. Then father died. Older brother moved back to India. I saw him after my wedding for the first time. My father's business is now being handled by my brothers. I was not left any inheritance or shares, but brothers gave me a part of theirs and said I should divorce my husband. Older brother came to my house and created a huge scene and took me to his home. I lived there till my divorce was finalized. I've been divorced for a year now. Brothers bought me a nice apartment to live in. My sister-in-laws are very nice, but I am a failure. I have no brains. All I do is watch K-dramas, cook twice a day, and go to the mall. I tried dating, but got harassed by a man who found out I was a rich divorcee. I sometimes am invited to get-togethers of the community. I do not mince my words when I talk about my husband or my mother. My husband and father-in-law had requested me to keep quiet about divorce, but I went ahead and told everyone I met. When people ask me why I stayed in that situation for so long, I tell them that my mother tattled on me to my husband when I told her what was going on. She gave husband and in-laws permission to take away my phone and to limit my movements. My in-laws are suffering because I'm running my mouth. My mother cannot face anyone in our family. She has not been to any function in the last 8 months. My mother and mother-in-law are calling me a-hole for being shameless. I do not know how wrong or right I am. Not the a-hole. You were the victim of terrible controlling aggression. Your parents didn't care, didn't feel like dealing with it, so told you to keep quiet and pretend it wasn't happening. That's classic aggression, gaslighting. I'm really glad your brothers helped you get out of that situation. I think you'd be best served by trying to find something that would make you happy. Whether that's a career, a partnership, or something else entirely, only you can say. Not the a-hole. I'm not sure culturally, but you tried to seek help and were blamed for seeking help, as well as blamed for your ex's misdeeds. They restricted your movement and did what they could to keep you in an aggressive situation for their own appearances. If they didn't want to look bad, they should have helped you, and now they're facing the consequences of their actions. Once again, not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Time to look after yourself. Get enrolled in a community college or the equivalent where you live. Build your self-esteem. See if you can get a job. The thing to do now is deciding how you are going to move forward. Don't deal with these people anymore. I imagine there are cultural issues at play here, so I don't know what to advise there. If you can put this marriage and these people behind you, it might be best for you. Your in-laws brought their suffering on themselves. Your mother seems to be suffering because she did not support you. The question is whether she feels bad about not being on your side, or people finding out that she was not on your side. Your brothers and sister-in-law sound wonderful. You'll be fine. Don't be so hard on yourself.